Welcome to my icebox, as I like to call it. I know I'm the only thing standing between you and lunch, so I went ahead and trimmed my presentation down to about 75 slides. We'll just get right through it and hopefully get ready in time for, no, not really. Actually, I only have a couple slides and I'm gonna do a demo for most of it. So if you're looking for, demo, seeing some code, that sort of thing, this is for you. If you were looking for a bunch of slides, maybe not the right place for you. Anyway, I'm going to talk about making Angular, React, or Vue apps quickly using a tool called JHipster Lite. And also, and what I've just been told is not Vite, but Vite. So anyway, so we'll look at that too. My name is Dennis Sharpe. I'm the CTO of Epon USA. I forgot to say, if you haven't been in this room previously, the projector is a little wonky. So especially if I start coding or something and it blanks out and I don't notice, just somebody say, hey, slow down or whatever, stop for a second so we can see. But anyway, hopefully it won't do it too much. I'm the CTO of Epon USA. Epon, we're a consulting firm. We take you from strategy to delivery. On the delivery side, we have 4 practices. We have a data practice, we have a cloud practice, a custom software engineering practice, and a product practice. I'm a big fan of JHipster and JHipster Lite. I'm curious, who here has actually heard of JHipster? Is people? Okay, a few. So I'll just briefly tell you what JHipster is if you don't know, and that will kind of lead into what JHipster Lite is. The original JHipster, which has been around, 8, 9, 10 years now, was created by a fellow originally created by a fellow named Julien Dubois, who used to work with us, and now he works for Microsoft. But of course, it's open source, and there are a lot of contributors nowadays. One of the questions I wanted to ask was just about frameworks. Who here, like their primary front-end framework they use is Angular? Okay. What about React? Oh, a lot of those, okay. Vue? Okay, not that many. Okay, well this is good. All right, most of the code stuff I'm doing is React, although I am going to show all 3. So I'm going to start just one little quick slide about what JHipster is if you've never heard of it. JHipster is an app generator. It generates both a front end and a back end for your application. It creates a real working, could go to prod, legit application. When you run JHipster, it'll ask you questions about what kind of app you want to generate. One of the questions is what kind of front end do you want to use? And right now the choices are Angular, React, or Vue. There is like a marketplace, and there have been a lot of people who have added their own front ends as well, but for the core product, those are the choices. And then there's also a data piece, so you can select what kind of database. Is it a SQL database or a NoSQL database? If it's a SQL database, do you want to use Postgres or MySQL or what have you? So you have a lot of choices to make. And then once you do that, you can then create what are called entities from the command line or from using YAML. And basically, you set up your data model, and it will generate code that will talk and do create, read, update, delete functions on the back end, and it'll create front-end code in the front-end framework that you chose. So it'll do all that. It'll also create config files for various CI/CD pipelines. It'll create files that will make it easier for you to deploy to the cloud of your choice. It'll do Docker files. So it does a lot of things. It does a full microservices architecture and you can add in, you can do redundancy and rate, limiting and all those things. So that's what JHipster is. JHipster has grown over the years. And it creates kind of a relatively large application typically from the jump, but it does have a lot of pieces already included for you. So the difference is JHipster Lite kind of flips that and says, I want to create something, but I just want to use the very bare minimum of what I need to create. I don't want to have, JHipster may actually add a lot of things that I don't need. So JHipster Lite is like, okay, here's a whole list of components. pick the ones you want, and those are the only components you're going to get. And that's, I'm going to show the actual app, of course, but this is just a little screenshot of what kind of the dependency graph looks like. So you can do just do a front-end application by itself. You can do a back-end application by itself. You can do a combination. So in the top window, it's kind of and I'll show you this in action, but it basically shows you the line of dependencies. So you say, I want an Angular JWT app. It'll draw out, okay, well, you need these 4 components to build that app. And then at the bottom there, I did a Spring Boot JWT, so just a backend. And you can see it says, okay, these are the modules you need, the components you need, and it will generate that for you, and that's all you'll get, nothing extra. So one of the things with JHipster is it'll ask you questions. You run it from the command line, JHipster. It'll say, all right, what kind of app do you want? What kind of database? What kind of security? JHipster Lite is more like, no, you just go to the UI and you select. So there's no question asking. There are some parameters you got to fill in, but there's no asking questions. This screenshot is also another different way that you can also select the components you want. So it doesn't create the CRUD pages. It doesn't do the CRUD backend either. So maybe it will one day. JHipster Lite is on version like 0.22, and JHipster, I'm not even sure what version it's on now, 7, 8, 9, something like that. So what it does is it creates basically a real simple, scaffolded startup project that you can then go from there and run with. So instead of starting with a blank slate, you get an app. It's got some patterns kind of baked in, and you just roll after that. So that's the idea behind JHipster Lite. By itself, just doing it, you're not going to get much. You're just going to get started faster. One of the big differences, though, between JHipster Lite and JHipster is that JHipster Lite uses the hexagonal architecture. So when you generate an application with JHipster, the way the files are laid out and kind of the base of how the application is set up is different. The hexagonal architecture, if you haven't heard of it, is basically where you have a core business logic in your application, and that is shielded from all the external pieces like talking to a database or talking to a file. So you put your core business logic in there, and they have this concept called ports. And the way that you get from the core to any outside system is through a port. So you're not allowed to directly from the application business logic, say, talk to a database. You can't do that. You have to use a port. And the other concept in hexagonal architecture is something called an adapter. So you have ports, that's your way into and out of the core, and the adapters are the actual pieces of code that talk to the specific system you're trying to talk to. So you can see examples in this diagram. So if you're talking to a database, you're going to have a database adapter. If you're reading from a file or writing to a file, you're going to use a file adapter. So that's hexagonal. There are books and other things you can read about that, but that's kind of a difference in approach as well. And then lastly, Vite by default, that has a lot of features, but the main feature that we use it for here is doing hot reload, so that when you're doing development, you've created your application, you can make front-end changes, and they were reflected immediately in the front end. You don't have to do any sort of running of commands to make those take effect, and I'll show that in the demo. And those are all the slides I have, absolutely. All right. So the first thing I want to do is show you what JHipster Lite looks like. So this is the absolute latest version of JHipster Lite. It is running out on the web. It's not running on my laptop. And this is what basically all the components that you can choose. And of course, these modules are getting added to as more and more versions, as higher versions of this are built, people are adding more and more modules. So what you do is you say, okay, I want to build something with, like I showed before, Angular JWT. I would just select that. And then I have a few pieces of information to fill out here, like a package name and a project name. And once I fill those out, I can apply and download and unzip the application, and that's it. So there are a few things that some of these items here are shaded differently, and they are because you have a choice. So what will happen is if you want to generate, say, this dummy feature, which I am going to do in a second, it's saying, okay, this is red now because you have to choose. Are you going to use Spring Boot, getting Tomcat or Undertow or Netty? So you would pick which one. And then now you have to pick a few other things. So that's basically how the UI works. The other part of the UI I showed before. This is kind of the original way it was done, and it actually, I don't like it as much because it's not as obvious what pieces depend on what other pieces. Anyway, so this is, of course, being worked on all the time. I think a release just came out yesterday, another version. So of course, happy to have people contribute too if they think this is cool. What I'm going to do though for speed purposes, I'm going to actually run it locally instead of off the web. And so it's a Docker container. I'm going to run just locally, and we'll do the whole demo off of that. Okay. So you'll notice immediately that the background, one of the versions after the version I have on my local, they changed the background from black to white. Not sure why, but anyway, same functionality. So what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and start with a React application. And what I want to do is I want to create a React application that is closer to real. So I want it to have a backend component as well. So I'm going to create a service on the back end, a REST service, and then I'm going to just have the code together real quick to show how fast, if I have a REST service and I use JHipster Lite, how fast I can get a React app talking to that REST service. So it just so happens they have this thing that I mentioned before called dummy feature, and that is going to build basically a dummy REST service for us, so I don't have to write it myself. Okay, so you can see here I have to make a few choices. I'm going to choose Tomcat. I'm going to do MVC instead of Webflux. I'm going to use JWT. And there you go. So those are my choices. I'm going to go ahead and fill in the package name. And we'll run it on port 8080, and that's it. So that tells me, okay, you selected 11 components. And so all of those components are going to be loaded up and ready for me to generate. I want a few other components though before I go ahead and download this. So to make this work, I want to do basic auth. So part of this demo too, it's not a real demo if there's no actual security on the REST service. So I want to go ahead and protect the REST service with JWT. You got to have a valid token to be able to make the call. So I'm going to pick basic auth, and that's how you're going to be able to log into the application. So now that I have that, that's mostly backend, I'm going to go ahead and say, all right, I want to use the React JWT front end. So I pick that, add that as well. And there's only one other piece that I like to do, it's totally optional of course, is this front-end Maven plugin, and that just makes it so Maven will run npm install and some of the front-end oriented commands. So I'll add that, and that'll give me 17 different components. And I just click download, and I'll get a zip file. All right. So I'm going to copy that zip file. Unzip it. Okay. All right, so I just made a new folder called Connect React. That's where my app lives. I'm going to go ahead and run Maven. And so this has got a backend component that is in Java, and it's got a front-end component that's in React. So you can see this code here has to be compiled in all the normal Maven stuff you do with Java. And then here you can see where it's running npm install as well for the React side. While that's starting up, I did want to show, this is the GitHub page for JHipster Lite. You can see it's version 0.22, so still pretty new project. There's a cool little thing on here on when you might choose to use JHipster versus JHipster Lite. You can see there's only one bubble for JHipster Lite right now. But so depending on what you're trying to do, what you're trying to build, you may choose between the two things. I've done demos on JHipster as well at this conference in DevNexus, and it's also a cool thing to check out if you have the time. All right, so you can see here our React application is now running on port 8080. Okay, so what does that look like? There it is, and cool little thing. Can you tell that the primary contributor of this so far is French? And you can see he's got some French here in the application. But anyway, the basic app that comes based on what I chose was a React app with just basically this home screen and the ability to log in, get your JWT, get your token. You can see here, if you do that, it pops up a modal that's generated, all in French, of course. And then there it says welcome admin. So now I'm actually logged in on this demo app, but I can't really do much. I need to actually add a little bit of code, and that's what I'm going to show. All right, so I made this called Connect React. All right, so the structure is your typical source main web app is where all of your React code is going to live. So you can see here there's a login, and some of these directories are based on this hexagonal architecture that I was describing earlier. But you can kind of see the pattern here of some of the code that's generated. We're going to copy that same pattern, and that's part of what you get. You can look at how, especially for me, and by the way, I wanted to mention 2 months ago, I had never written any React before. So take it easy on me if I did it poorly, if I do it poorly. But so I basically use this as, okay, I'm going to generate this login, and I'm going to look at that, and I'm going to kind of copy and paste it and then mess with it to figure out how to do React, hopefully properly, unless somebody tells me after that it's all wrong. But so one of the patterns here is they have this interface file, and so I need that as well. So you might wonder, okay, well, what is the service that we... So Swagger comes with this generated app. If you've never used Swagger, it just has like all your APIs are listed here, and you can look at them and test them and things. Anyway, wouldn't you know that the dummy service is called Beers, and the dummy feature, and it has the API functions of being able to get a list of beers, add a beer to a catalog, or remove a beer. So the only thing I need to know to be able to call that is, okay, what do these beer objects look like? And you can look in here in Swagger and see, okay, a beer has an ID, it has a name, and it has a unit price. So I just need to model that in my React code to be able to pull it from the REST service. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make a new directory called beers inside my app here, and I am going to create one of these interface files. Okay, and to save time, I'm not going to type out a bunch of code. I'm going to cheat and copy, but I'll talk about what it does. Okay, so this is the simple interface file that I need because I need to describe, okay, I have a beer, and the beer needs an ID, a name, and a unit price. And then up here is my call to the actual REST service. I'm going to get back an array of beers. Okay, so that, and then the other thing I need is I'm going to need a service. And the pattern here is to make a services folder. You can see here, I'll call that beers.TypeScript. And then, let me cheat again. Okay, so then I have a service. This is a simple service file that calls the REST service and gets back a list of beers. You can see here, this is where the data is put into the beers array. Up here, I am having to pass in the JWT. So I'm sure there are better ways. I've heard you can do interceptors or something similar, but for simplicity, I did this. You can see I'm using local storage. The login service that was generated set the token already in local storage when you log in. So I'm merely just getting that token back out and putting it on the header so that I can get access to the service. If we don't pass this, we will not be able to get the beers call through. So that's only one more piece really, and that is the actual index file. We'll call it beers. Got to stay consistent. Oh, I want that up here. Okay. Okay, and so this is basically where we're going to display the beers. We have to make a call here to the REST service, to the service that calls the REST service, and then we're going to put that into an array of beers, and then I just have some super simple HTML here where I'm making a bulleted list of beers. And you can see, because this can get called, I don't know how much you know about React, but this can get called kind of before the data is actually ready. You have to actually check and make sure that the data is there. Once the data is there, you can just map out all the beers into, and I'm just doing the name and the price in a list here. Okay, so that's all I had to do, and now I have a new page that calls a REST service and displays it on the screen. And I pretty much just copied the pattern that was already there. There are a few little things I have to do. I have to add a route to this beers page. So I am going to go ahead and install a router. Okay. And I just have to add this route to the index page. Okay. And of course, I have to import that as well. All right, so we have a route now. So if we go to /beers, that'll take us to our page and it show us our beers. So the only last thing is I want to link to this new page. So the actual page is in common. This is the actual home page component here. So I'm going to add a link in there. All right, and then I just need to import that. I'm good to go. All right, so now I have a link from the home page to go to my beers page. I have a route to get there, and I have the service call to actually make the call. So I'm going to run Vite or Vite. I can just do npm run start here inside the directory, and that will run Vite. And you'll see it runs it on a different port, 9000. Okay, so probably hard to see on the screen, but there's a new link here. It says I love beer. If I take you there, beers. Oh, wait, there's no beers. We got to add some. Okay, cool. To do that, I'm actually going to use curl. That's the easiest way to do it. So to do curl, I have to log in first. So I do a curl command to log in, and then I get the JWT, and then I'm going to run another curl command to actually add a beer, because I'm only going to list them in the screen here. Does anybody have a favorite beer? Let's throw it, just shout out a brewery or a beer you like. IPAs? All right, cool. Okay, and we'll make a beer called IPA. Yeah, that's probably more than $7 these days. I don't know, we'll see. All right, cool. So I added that. I'll add one. We'll do different types. So I'll do a stout. Maybe that's $6. And we'll do a Pilsner, $5. Okay, oops, I did 6, but whatever. All right, so now we added some beers. Okay, let's go back here and click this. Oh, man, still not showing up. Oh, right, I gotta log in because I have this protected, the security. So log in first. Okay, welcome. Aha, there we go. So now this page is making a call to that new, that dummy REST service and bringing back the beers. Did it pretty quickly. And there's all the framework is there to go ahead and add all the pages and other things that you want to add. So that's basically the React demo, how it works, JHipster Lite. Oh, I did want to show you a little bit about Vite. You can, because I'm running in Vite, I can do stuff like, you know, one of my favorite places in my hometown. This is their slogan. Beer is the answer. And you can see it's already popped up. So you can make changes on the fly and do development, and you don't have to reload the pages or anything like that and run anything else. All right, so that's React. I'm going to show you some Angular. All right, so I'm going to do very similar. I'm going to do this dummy feature again. I'm going to do Tomcat. I'm going to do MVC, JWT, dummy feature. I'm going to do it a little faster this time, since you kind of get the feel for it. All right, get our basic auth. This time we're going to do Angular JWT. Get that. Get my front-end Maven plugin I like. Done. And download that. What was that? .NET. So JHipster Lite doesn't generate a .NET backend, so you could use it just for the front end, and then of course the front end piece is just going to make a REST call. So at that point, who cares what the REST service is made out of? It could be .NET or any other language, right? you just wouldn't take advantage of it. I have a feeling that this will end up having .NET backend because JHipster, for instance, started as a Java tool, but there's now a JHipster that does .NET as well, which makes sense too because Julian went to Microsoft, so it makes sense he would have made some of that. So. Okay, so I just unzipped that. All right, I'll run Maven on that as well. And that takes a little bit of time to do. So one of the things I was telling some of my coworkers about yesterday or the day before was I found this weird thing that's happened when I am running Maven, like I'm running Maven now on this project. And if while I'm in the middle of doing that, I load the project in VS Code, it jacks up. I don't know why. It's kind of weird. But anyway, so if I just let this run and then go to VS Code, it's all good. So something weird going on there. But anyway, just caution for you if you do this. So that's why I'm not loading up the project in VS Code right now. Instead, I'm waiting for this Maven to run first and pm install to run. I am going to load up my test project. You can see that the pattern is a little bit different in an Angular application. There's a lot more files involved. Angular also, like React, I hadn't been doing Angular either, and so before 2 months ago when I started preparing for this, I hadn't done Angular since the Angular JS days, so hopefully this pattern is good, but this is the pattern that's promoted by the generator, and this is the pattern I copied when I made the beers screen again for Angular. Okay, it's running now. Let's go back. All right, now you see we have very similar to the React front end, but this is an Angular front end. It has login already built in, and it works. You can log in here, and then so I'm going to do the similar steps. But I'll go ahead and load up that code. Connect Angular. All right. And this time, I'm going to just copy the code over, but we'll take a look at it. So again, I'm going to go ahead and make a beers directory. And I'm going to just copy the files over from this project here. And we'll take a look at them. Okay, so, oops. Highlight. There we go. All right, so the first thing we need, just like with React, we need basically an interface, or in this case, we're calling it a model. So I have my beer interface, just like we React, with the ID, the name, and the price, and I'm going to get back an array of beers. Same thing, I have to do a service. The service is where we make the actual call to the beers API, the REST service. You can see that code here. One of the things that I had to do in React was install a router. You don't have to do that in Angular, but you do have to add a route. Again, I copied the pattern that was here. There's a login route, so I just copied it and made a beers route. There's a login module. I did a beers module. The only thing I did add here is I added a table because that's how I'm going to display it. This is where the actual call to the service is made. So here, I have a beers component. This is making a call right here to the beers service. So all that stuff is pretty similar. It's just the Angular way of doing it versus the React way of doing it. And then the actual display, instead of doing a unordered list in HTML, I'm doing a table instead, but it's basically the same. I'm doing an ID, a name, and a price. And so like before with React, we have to add a link and we have to add a route. So in Angular, there's a routing module. So I just take this one. And change the login stuff to beers. Okay, so now I have a path, and then I just need a link. And I'm going to copy that from other guy. So there's this router link. I just need to have that to get to my new beers page. Okay. That should be good. So we're going to run Vite again. For some reason in Angular, it takes a few seconds longer to run this. I'm not sure why. Okay, port 9000, where that runs. All right. Again, we need to add beers because this is a different service running now. Get a token. And you just got to replace the token with our new one. You should be able to do this also inside of the Swagger UI if you want. Obviously, if I want to keep building on this, I would make a page that would allow you to add a beer as well. All right, so we're out of Pilsner. Add an IPA. Okay, cool. And again, if we go to our link, nothing comes because we haven't logged in. You have to sign in. Go here. And sorry about the formatting, my HTML. But there's an ID, each beer, and the price. So you can see there. Very similar to, but quickly. And these apps, they have, there's different pieces that come with. There's a logger piece and things like that. So some of the basic things that you would normally need when you create a new app, they're here for you. But then it's also available to write backend code as well and add backend to this. And that is Angular. And then I'm going to do a very short view. I'm going to just do a front end for Vue. And we'll take a look at that. And some of these things are kind of still in progress because it is version 0.22. Okay, so if we want to do Vue, I'll just do a Vue core app, and that's it. I'm just going to be 3 components. I'll call it Connect Vue, Connect Vue. I don't need to give any other information. There we go. So if you just wanted a front-end app, you wanted to get started, you could just do this. Get your 3 components here. Okay, and we will run npm install on that. Alrighty. Run Vite, and now we have it on port 9000. So you'll see that's the view, very similar to what we had before. So it's just a very basic home page, but it sets up the patterns for you. We can look at what it looks like in the in VS Code. So you just have that home page, but you have kind of this scaffolding and patterns already set up for you to do hexagonal architecture, and also just a good way to organize your application, I hope. Like, I'm also not a Vue expert, so some people may disagree with it, the way it's laid out, but that's the idea, is to be hexagonal architecture compliant and be a nice pattern for, like, okay, I want to start an app on things like, okay, there's a logger already here and things like that. So there's some basic pieces already there. And of course, you can pick if you want to add more. And that is the last of my presentation. So does anybody have any questions about JHipster Lite or JHipster? Okay. I got you. You're 15 minutes early for lunch. This is great. Well, thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.